welcome to the F'd Up podcast. It's nice
Thank
to see you again.
Excited to be here, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, we're going to be talking a lot about XRP today.
Okay, let's get
Right,
it.
we're going to go, you cool with going down some rabbit holes?
Let's go.
All right, so.
My favorite thing.
So obviously me and you share a following, but there's also people that follow me that don't follow you, vice versa, right?
Yep.
And a lot of people hear you talk about XRP. They've heard me talk about it. I don't know enough about it.
Got it.
I think you're when I've listened to people over the years, you're somebody that's more knowledgeable than most, right? I think it's going to be here. I tell my following all the time. It's going to be here, but how big is it going to be? Is it going to be the 589 like the Simpsons said, right? Is it like what's that rabbit hole, right?
Yeah.
But no, so my question and my following's question to you was, why are you so confident that XRP is going to be part of the global banking system?
Great questions. Well, I came from the global banking system, so I think we'll start there. So when I left the banking system in 2017, went on this journey to find myself, I ended up finding XRP. So somebody walked in one of my facilities, one of my businesses, and I was like, have you ever heard of XRP? And I was like, at that point in my life, I was completely anti-crypto, right? Coming from the banking system, it was Bitcoin's a fraud, it's used for money laundering.
Right.
And so, so they walked in and said XRP. The first thing I pulled up was a phoenix rising from the ashes. And if you know my personal story, I'm kind of like the phoenix rising from the ashes. So I was intrigued by that. And then I started to dive into the actual mechanisms of XRP and the utility of it. And the first thing I said to myself was, why don't banks use this? And as I started to dive outside of America, banks were using it. And I'm like, this is exactly what the banks needed. So I went to CBA Executive Banking School, learning how to scale banks from the bottom up. And the settlement mechanisms are slow, they're archaic, super expensive. And I'm like, well, why is not everybody using this? And then as I started to go deeper into it, I started to really see the mechanism of cross-border payments, settlements, how the economy was changing. You got Venmo, PayPal. Even with Venmo and PayPal, with settlements, yeah, there's a quicker settlement for a fee, right? But if you do the regular thing, it takes 2 to 3 days, a settlement, right? There's always a nostro or vostro account that has to happen. And I'm like, this actually solves the liquidity problem. And so that's how I got introduced to XRP. And when I started to realize, I'm like, oh my gosh, this could actually solve liquidity crisis. It can solve that nostro vostro that's happening right now. So that's how I got introduced to it. And a lot of people say, oh, it's going to take over the whole global banking system. I think what's going to happen is XRP is a great utility to be able to help liquidity. Is it going to take over the whole global banking system? I don't know about that, but it is a service that could really help the liquidity crisis within the banking. So that's where it started out for me.
See, that's where it turned me off. Right, with XRP was that everybody's like, this is the only thing we're ever going to need.
No.
Right, just like the Bitcoin maxis, right? Bitcoin's the only thing you're ever going to need. So that kind of turned me off from it. That's why I'm very curious for you to keep going.
Yeah, because when we were, heard David Schwartz speak, and he even said that. He's like, being a maximalist around XRP is silly. It's like you have XRP, you have XLM, you have an iPhone, you have a Samsung, right? It's a settlement mechanism. Now, the way the company is run, so I invest in crypto. I call myself a Warren Buffett style investor. When I read the book Intelligent Investor, Warren Buffett read it at 12 years old, and he switched from investing in stocks to companies. So I did the same thing with crypto. So because what I knew about it was very speculative. It was, according to the big bankers, it was used for money laundering, rat poisoning, and all this stuff. So I started to look at it, and I'm like, wow, Ripple, the company, is a very well-run company. So number one, very well over-capitalized or collateralized. I looked at their board of directors, I looked at their leadership team, and I'm like, not only is Ripple a great company, but XRP has an awesome utility. So as I looked into that, so I became a big proponent of it, and then all of a sudden, boom, December 20th, 2020, they dropped this. Ripple gets sued by the SEC around XRP. And I'll never forget that, because I had only been in crypto. I started late 2019, early 2020, and during the pandemic. And so this was all new to me, right? So I'm going down all these rabbit holes, and then all of a sudden, and I had been talking about it, and everybody's like, why did you talk about XRP? Because a bunch of people started getting into it. And I remember on December 20th, 2020, something hit me that, like, there's something to this. Like, why would they sue, in my opinion, the most well-run company? And besides Bitcoin, it's one of the oldest cryptocurrencies. It's been around for 14 years now.
Right.
So Bitcoin's in 2009, and Ripple came on board in 2012, and we can go down that rabbit hole of that date specifically, or that timeline specifically. So I don't get caught up in emotion. I looked at it and said, there's something bigger here happening, and I feel it's playing out the way that we felt it was going to play out. So.
Hey, I mean, I'm starting to get on board with that. I just bought some the other day, and I've always told my following, you guys know, I've told you, XRP is going to be one of my biggest plays the next bull run.
Yeah, I agree with that.
This one, I still think it'll do. I mean, I still think it's going to do well.
Yeah.
This entire market, people have no idea what's coming in 2025.
Right.
And if that's if the cycle plays out the way it
Correct.
has always played out.
Correct,
Right.
yep.
We don't know exactly.
Yep.
But it doesn't matter what crypto you own. I think everything at some point is going to go crazy. Just imagine, there's a lot of things going on in the world. The presidencies,
Right.
the war, all these
Yes.
crazy things, right? But yeah, no, that's awesome. So,
And then think about it too, like the last bull cycle, crypto was a fraud. Now you have the largest asset manager in the world, Larry Fink, saying it's a flight to quality. So everything switched. You had banks started to collapse in 2023. We had our first bank collapse. The bond yields inverted in 2023. Money supply stopped dramatically. And now, we just talked about on our channel, is money supply starting to pick up now? And then Jerome Powell announced that they're going to lower interest rates on top of after 6 months after the Bitcoin halving.
Yeah,
so we have all these factors coming together
here
to
comes
head.
the cheap money again.
Yes,
Well,
yep.
I mean, I don't know if they're going to lower them too quickly.
No,
Typically,
no,
they do
yeah.
about, 25 basis points each time.
Yep.
But that's the start of us going back to the printing of money again.
Mm-hmm.
Not that we ever stop, but it's like, are we going to excessively do it?
Right. Yeah, and that goes into the whole narrative of like people, where people get down these rabbit holes of like the switch. Everybody talks about the switch and the switch in the financial system. It's not a switch. Money is changing. Whether you like it or not, money is changing. Right.
Yeah.
We had a gold-backed currency, and then they made a paper currency that looked like the greenbacks, right? So they called it $1. It's fiat, it's fake money, right?
Yeah.
Now we're going to digital currency. Now there's a lot of things that play out in that and how systems change, but we're going to a digital world, and that's what we're going to. And so that's why I'm pretty bullish on XRP. And I agree with you too. I'm not a people are like price predictions, where I'm a long-term holder of all these. I have an exit strategy on the way up. If it goes to my exit targets that I think it's going to go to realistically, I'll exit. If I don't, I hold, right? So I don't get caught up in the actual price. I get caught up in the long-term fundamental value.
So you
of
don't
it.
think it's going to 589 like the Simpsons said?
No. If it does, I don't think you'll ever see me again. No, I'm just kidding.
You better
I'll be
fly me
on
out
an
to wherever
island
you are.
somewhere. Yeah.
I want to see your island. No, but well, that's cool. So my next question, in terms of Brad Garlinghouse, because this is something that I get a lot of, and we talk about, off camera, we were just talking about
Yeah.
like the rabbit hole. Is he going to be pulled into the club? Brad Garlinghouse and XRP and company, they own a massive portion of the supply.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And so that, not that that's off-putting for me, or for retail investors, but I look at like the entire industry adopting it. If the banking
Yeah.
system's going to work with them, right?
Yep.
Are they going to let XRP and company and Brad Garlinghouse and company into the club? Are they? Because again, think about it. If XRP becomes as big as they say it is,
Yep.
right, an on and off ramp for the banking system
Sure.
globally, right, or maybe not every single bank, but like we just said, a lot of what's going to change. He's going to be part of that club. He's going to be a Larry Fink. He's going to be a Jamie Dimon.
Yeah.
He's going to be that kind of guy. And do they want to let him in the club? And you said earlier, I think he might already be. But let's talk about
Yeah,
that.
I don't know. Taking the club part out of it, it's like we just have to think of the settlement mechanism. You got JPM Coin, right? You got Jamie Dimon's already created his own, which
Right.
he's one of the biggest bankers
What
in
is
the
it
world.
called? Onyx or something,
Onyx,
yeah.
yep. So they got that. You got R3, which is Corda, which is working with Wells Fargo, but R3 uses XRP as their settlement, right? Then you got Ripple is inside of Bank of America's patent. So XRP itself, we'll talk about that. A lot of people bring up to me about decentralization, like, oh, it's a centralized. It's actually the opposite. It's decentralized, and here's why. We'll talk about why it's decentralized from a validator point, and then we'll talk about what I believe is happening with the escrow, right? So from a validator point so they're out of 130 plus validators, Ripple only controls 4 of them. So that makes it completely decentralized. On the other side, with them owning so much of the supply, a lot of people don't realize this goes back to my 2020 narrative when they sued Ripple. It's like there's something going on here. The case lasted for 4 years. That doesn't make any sense. Like within the SEC, usually egregious cases last about 12 to 24 months. But this lasted for 4 years.
It's like they were stifling innovation.
Right. Because think about this too, and why would Ripple's genius? They're a smart company. They own a ton of the supply because they release $1 billion into escrow every single month. But institutions are buying that, which again makes it more decentralized.
Which institutions are buying it?
Well, it's for institutions. I shouldn't say which. I don't know what institutions are buying it, but as they're releasing it into escrow, that's for institutions.
That's interesting.
Right? So if they buy it up, if Wells Fargo buys it up,
That would decentralize it more.
correct. So XRPL becomes more decentralized every time they release escrow because institutions are buying those.
Okay.
So a lot of people feel that it's if it's going to be a settlement mechanism, as David Schwartz says, it can't be cheap. It can't be cheap. So the more it gets released into escrow, so if you're a retail investor and you hold it, to me, I look at like Bitcoin and XRP, I'm holding a part of history. Like taking out the price appreciation and taking out, everybody getting an island and all this stuff. It's like, I'm holding a part of history and a change in a financial system, and that's the way that I look at it. And so
let me ask you this, because this has always been an argument that I've made, and I other people have made, excuse me. So essentially the U.S. government or any government in the world or banking system can create their own XRP. The technology is out there.
Correct,
right?
correct.
So,
Yep.
so what, I guess, what stops the banking system or the U.S. government from creating their own, right, versus using XRP? That's always been my hiccup with it, right, is like, I get the use case. I understand the team is great, the board of directors, right? I understand the technology. Although older, it's still, like, at the end of the day, that doesn't matter. A lot of people say, oh, it's old technology. That doesn't matter. They can always advance, right? They can always build onto the blockchain. But again, what happens if the U.S. government says we're going to make a central bank digital currency and we're going to have our own on and off ramp and we're not going to use XRP? So that's always what made me not hold a ton of it. I hold some of it, by the way, like all of you. You're watching. I was just telling JV, I just bought 20 grand worth of it. I owned 5,000 of it for the longest time, right? And I was going to keep that as a moon bag forever, right? To see if I'm, if the Simpsons are right, great. That's how I always joke with people. But I did buy some more of it as of late because I'm seeing, the switch from Gary Gensler, the switch from I'm going to attack crypto to we need to have a different approach.
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
And also what's coming in terms of the presidency. If Trump wins, we know that crypto is going to deregulate and it's going to boom. Right. Whereas I don't know the other side of it. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. We just don't know.
Sure.
I'm not trying to get political on it, but so that's always been my argument.
Yeah.
Right. Is what happens?
That's a great argument. And so the way that I overcome that argument is looking at, like, for example, you have Bitcoin in 2009 and you have Ripple in 2012, which has been around for 14 years, right? So they already have the technology, they have the partnerships. They're the only company that's now beat the SEC. So when I think about it, I'm like, if I was a betting man, I'd bet on a company that beat the SEC, that has the technology, they have RippleNet, they are decentralized, right? And then as the escrow goes in, these companies can buy it up. Because I think about it coming from the banking perspective is regulation is key in this, right? If you're Bank of America, there's no way you're going to go with a company that is not regulated, number one. Number two, has not gone through the rigorous process of getting regulated, and now they beat the SEC. So that kind of helps me with my argument of why wouldn't they use Ripple, right? Because it is the only one with regulation now. So if they wanted to move fastly into instant settlements, Ripple would be your company right now. Now, that's not to say that governments couldn't create their own or other companies couldn't, but then it'd be, again, it goes into like the Apple.
You got to go through that whole process.
Yeah, the Apple, the Samsung, and a lot of people don't realize how well capitalized, collateralized or capitalized Ripple is. I mean, the company is a very, very wealthy company. Like, I'm pre-IPO in Ripple as well. But I think they're going to IPO, but if they IPO, they're going to be one of the largest, I believe, financial institutions in the world.
Yeah, I think they'll go to hundreds of billions, like overnight.
Overnight, yep.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. How long do you think this is going to take to change? Are we waiting for a financial collapse before it changes? Or are they going to keep pumping this thing for the next 20 years? And again, understand, before we go any further, everybody should know we're literally speculating on what we think.
Yeah.
We're not mind readers.
Right.
This is JV, not Notre Dame. Right? But like, based off of your research and everything, how long?
Yeah, great question. And so I guess the best way to predict the future is to study history, right? So we study history. So number one is the first person I would encourage everybody to follow is Ray Dalio, the Ray Dalio Changing World Order, right? And the big debt crisis. So Ray Dalio went back 500 years, and you see massive economic booms and cycles, right? So America is on a downswing of a cycle, and some of the signs of that is large debts, large wealth gaps, society kind of turning against each other, what's happening right now, the left versus right, and weak leadership. You can decide whether you think our leadership is strong right now or not. I'm not getting into politics, but we're on the back end of a big changing world order. And so it's not conspiracy. This happens in countries over and over and over again.
There's a book on this too, right? Ray Dalio.
Yeah, Ray Dalio,
The Changing World Order.
Phenomenal book, and he takes Ray Dalio is a billionaire. He has Bridgewater Associates, just retired, but he basically took it back 500 years and looking at rise and fall of dynasties or of countries, and so of superpowers. And so what happens is, if we take ourselves back to 1929, we had the Great Depression, right? Hear ye, the banks are collapsing. Well, they didn't have social media, and people like us doing this stuff, they're like, oh my gosh, the banks are collapsing. So everybody liquidates the bank. banks, and then all of a sudden we go into the, one of the biggest financial collapses in history. Well, from 1929 was the crisis period up to World War II, right? So now we're going into this polarizing time where left and right are completely turning against each other. And then all of a sudden, there was a common enemy, right? Pearl Harbor got bombed, Americans came back together, we went to war, and then what happened after World War II? Bretton Woods Standard, right? We had new governmental structures came in. We became the most dominant currency. But since we have to go all the way back to 1913, when the Federal Reserve was created, our dollars collapsed 97 to 99% since the Federal Reserve was created, right? So that's something we have to look at. So now we're in America. We're in a debt-based society. We have more debt than we have income. The G7 has more debt than it has income. They printed more money than in history from 2020 to 2024. More money than they printed for 223 years up into 2008.
I remember that. Yeah,
it's crazy.
Just during I don't want to say the words depending on what platform we're putting this on, but just that whole thing that happened in 2020 where everybody got stuck in their homes.
Sure.
Right.
Yep.
Everybody knows what I'm talking about, right? How much money did we print during that? Wasn't it 1/3 of our money supply?
1/3, yeah.
Within just a couple years.
Yeah, it was 24. I think it was 24 trillion that was printed, and then
that's just U.S. dollars.
Just U.S. dollars, yep. And we're the only country. So this is important for everybody to understand. We're the only country that can print our way out of our problems, and so we're talking about this as well. Is most debt is denominations are American dollars. So. I think 1/3 of our debt is held outside the United States by Japan and China, right? And so we're in this weird position right now where money needs to change. The system has to change.
More than that, actually.
Is it?
Than 1/3.
Is
I'm
it?
pretty sure
Okay.
it's the opposite. It's way more debt is held outside of the U.S. than in the U.S.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. So if you think about it, so if we just look at history, so right now something has to change. So it's not by chance that all of a sudden the largest asset manager in the world in 2023, after banks start to collapse, and we'll go back to 2012 in a minute. In 2023, the first bank collapsed. Our bond yields inverted, right? That Larry Fink's like, wait a minute. Bitcoin's a flight to quality. He said it. He said, I made a mistake. It's a flight to quality.
I remember him
then
saying
they
it was
launched
like rat poison.
Then they launched the Bitcoin ETF. Wells Fargo, Bank of America, J.P. Morgan Chase. You guys can all look this up. Is they all got access to to Bitcoin through the ETF. Also, Larry Fink and Vanguard, the top two holders, in the top three, before Bitcoin's ETF, they got access to MicroStrategy, which is the largest Bitcoin holder. And now, is it by chance that in the Bitcoin conference, in the presidential campaign, now there's this Bitcoin narrative.
Yeah,
so the Bitcoin.
Well, it's 1 in every 4 Americans now own crypto.
Do they really? Holy cow! I didn't even know that. So things are changing, and so now we're in this environment where everybody's like. So we went from cryptocurrencies a fraud to it being part of the presidential election to Cynthia Lummis creating a bill that they want to pull Bitcoin out of the treasury, which goes into her question here. I feel that we're going into a big transition. I've been talking about this since 2020. 2030 is when we're going to start to see the big shift, right? So 2024 through 2026 for cryptocurrency is going to be a big boom. We're going to have a big bear market, probably a stock market collapse as well. There has to be some sort of catalyst to move us into the new system.
Okay.
There has to be. And so
that makes sense.
I think by 2030, your banks will be custodying your cryptocurrency.
You think that's when XRP is going to be used a lot more?
Yeah, and for people like that are XRP maxis that are saying it's going to go to 589, 10,000 a coin, whatever it is, you need utility. I mean, that's what you need. I mean, a bull run's going to make it go up, maybe $10, maybe. Hopefully, that'd be great. But you need massive utility. You need money to run through the system, and XRP has the ability to do that. So
that makes sense. So I mean, so we're both in agreement on this that XRP is going to be used in the future. It's just I don't think it's. And again, I tell everybody, because a lot of people want to know, they ask you all the time, they ask me, what's your price target? And it's like, guys, XRP is one of those projects that I'm holding on to for like 15, 20 years.
Yes.
Like that's going to be like maybe even if it ends up becoming what it was made to do, and it ends up being used by the global banking system, the insurance world, right? Just transactions and as a whole between that whole system, basically replacing SWIFT. Right?
Correct. Yeah.
Right. Am I?
Yeah. The SWIFT is a settlement system, and the first thing is a lot of people get another thing too. They're like, oh, XRP is an ISO token. They're not ISO tokens. They're ISO compliant. So there was ISO, which is a messaging system. So they're transitioning messaging to move at the speed of light, and now there's ISO compliant tokens, which would be XRP. XLM, I think Algorand's in there, and that just means the messaging system moves at the speed of light, the transaction needs to move at the speed of light. And so I keep telling people, I'm like, there's just a change in money. That's what it is. A lot of people aren't even going to realize they're operating on a blockchain. They're not even going to realize that their money changed.
It's true. I mean,
Right.
you're using the internet today, and although you know you're using the internet, you don't know how it's working behind the scenes. You're just using it.
Correct.
So it's the same thing that's going to happen with crypto as a whole. It's just
Yep.
a matter of which ones are going to win.
That's a great way to look at XRP too. People aren't going to know they're transacting on XRP. Like, so they're going to be moving money, and the bank settlement will be XRP. But does that make sense? There'll be a rail there, but you're using a train, Bank of America train, and on that rail, it may be XRP as a settlement.
So you're
maybe
going to sign
XLM.
into your phone, or you're going to go use your phone. You're going to tap like you do today, and it's all going to be running
Yep.
behind the scenes, and you don't even know it. So I guess I could see that. My biggest argument though is always like, well, what happens when a central bank digital currency comes in? Does that alter what we're talking about with XRP?
I don't think so. I mean, they're launching their stable coin, but you have, I hope we don't get a central bank digital currency. I hope we,
I think it's inevitable.
Yeah, I do too.
It's just a matter of is it going to be in the next 5 years or the next 20?
Yeah, I think
it's
the central bank digital currency will be so everything is run through the central bank. I still think that XRP will be here, XLM will be here. There'll still be settlement mechanisms outside of the central bank.
If there is a central bank digital currency, they could very well use XRP as the
They could. I don't know. It's like people get caught up in saying that's where it gets caught up with where people are like, there's an XRP group that's like, oh, it's going to take over the whole world, and I'm like, I don't look at it that way.
Yeah.
I look at it as a great investment that I made. I really trust the company. I'm in Ripple, heavy in Ripple pre-IPO as well. I think for not financial advice, but I'm heavily pre-IPO in Ripple. And so just to explain to people, you have XRP the token, then you have Ripple the company, which is pre-IPO and pre-ICO. And then if we go into the case, like the December 20, 2020, when that dropped, I was like, this does not make sense. Like, it doesn't make sense for them to go after the most well-run crypto company in the ecosystem. But then we go back to 2012. Okay, 2012, there was a lot of stuff that happened. So Rosie Rios, the 43rd Treasury of the United States, was told to reduce coin and cash usage, right? She said she couldn't because she couldn't move it. She couldn't do it because you need a shock to the system. Because there was too much money in the system. Also in 2012, they created the Bank Bail-In Committee. Okay, the Bank Bail-In Committee, that's important. A bank bail-in is very different than a bank bailout. Okay, we had the Bank Bailout Committee. Bank bailout is when you inject money into the company to get them out. Bank bail-in is when you turn the debt into equity and another company monopolizes it, right? Okay. So 2012 was a big shift in our financial system. Then we come into 2020. Jay Clayton initiated the case against Ripple about XRP being a security. He bounces and leaves to consult for a cryptocurrency firm that just increased their position in Bitcoin and Ethereum. And in check this out, in 2022.
That helped Ripple's case.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And then in 2022, we find out that Jay Clayton is now on the board for the Bank Bail-In Committee. Gary Gensler leaves the head of the MIT professor to become the head of the SEC.
Who was always talking about how great crypto is going to be, teaching.
And then all of a sudden it flips, right? So there's and I think what happened is Ripple is one of the most disruptive technologies, and so they slowed it down. They slowed down the process. They stifled
the innovation, just like they did with the automobile, just like they did.
It's the same thing if you study history. There's always, first they resist it, then they sue it, then they regulate it, then they join it. Draper, right? Draper brought that up. And so we're in regulation and joining phase, and so that's what we're experiencing. So to go back to that lady's question, probably 2030 you'll start to see more implementation and normalization of this, which might suck the volatility out of it, which could be good, but also bad for if you're a crypto investor trying to profit, right? Because the more regulation, it's going to suck more of the volatility out of the assets. But I do agree with you too. I think for me, I would love for it to go to whatever people think it's going to go to. If it does, I exit. I'm exiting 50%. I'm holding 50% forever for moonbags, right? But again, too, I have a huge strategy outside of cryptocurrency, right? So I always tell people, don't mix your investments with your retirement. Like, if you think crypto is your retirement, then you're probably going to get wrecked.
Yeah, a lot of people aren't going to sell it when they need to.
Right.
Really, one of the biggest things I think people are just wondering about it. Let's just say that it does become the on and off ramp.
Okay.
Right, and that does happen. Right. Again, maybe you already answered it, but if that does happen, you're thinking 2030, right? So are we going to see an economic meltdown before that happens, right? Do we need an economic meltdown before that happens? Like, does the system need to completely reset, or can we print our way out of this and still implement all of this stuff and slowly move it over, or do we have to collapse it
Yeah,
That's like,
I think there's a big difference to what's happening too. I mean, they're almost giving us the hint. You know, the Trump campaign is all pro crypto now, right? You got a whole crypto,
Right.
and the left still has to implement crypto. It might look a lot different, CBDC and all that stuff. But if you look at the what we're talking about, so if you look at Bitcoin, this could be the savior, man, because they said if you pull it underneath the treasury, and they don't sell it. So this is crazy. So if you pull Bitcoin, and we did the math, if you pull Bitcoin underneath the treasury, actually Cynthia Loomis did the math, but I'll break down the Bitcoin math. It can solve our debt problem and cut it in half by 2045.
she talked about that at Bitcoin Nashville.
Yep.
We were there.
So here's why: because 94% of the supply is gone, completely gone.
Right.
There's it's going to be mined in the next 116 years. We know every 4 years the rewards for mining goes down, makes it more scarce.
Yep.
Right? If 116 years, they're gonna reduce. They print not print. They mine 450 a day, and in their bill they want to buy 550 a day. So every day Bitcoin's going to become more valuable, more valuable, more valuable. So that could be the reset for the monetary system.
So essentially, we take our money that we keep printing, right, and we buy Bitcoin with it. The price of Bitcoin goes up, and that goes up faster than the printing of money.
You got it. Yeah, it shrinks the balance sheet basically. Yeah. So
we can actually get us out of this national debt.
Correct.
Which really, I mean, that's a question. I didn't have this on there, but
Yeah.
let's go into that in terms of the national debt, because that's something that people worry about.
Yeah,
I have
should.
clients
They
that
should worry about it.
Yeah, I have clients worry about it all the time, and I worry about it and I don't, right? How much can we print before it blows up? Can we go to 100 trillion? Can we go to 200 trillion? Can we go to 300 trillion? We don't know, right?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I guess my question to that, and everybody's question to that, is like, if we keep putting money into Bitcoin, I guess, are we going to be forced to switch over to that system? That's the whole point, right?
I think we have to switch over. There's no, like you said it, if they keep printing, they keep monetizing debt, at some point, basically we'll just talk about banking. If I walk into a bank and put in $10,000, right? They're going to lend out $9,000 to the next person walking in for debt. There's no money in the system. My money is your debt is my money, right? So we're the only country that can keep printing. Even the economic advisor for Biden didn't even, I don't see if you see that video when he tried to explain about bonds. He's like, we print money and we buy bonds and we sell
the old white guy.
We sell the bonds back, and I'm like, you're the economic advisor for Biden. You can't explain bonds. So basically, we print money, we buy bonds, we sell it to the public, right? They also buy junk bonds off of companies, and they sell it to the public. So we're monetizing debt. So they can keep printing and they can keep monetizing debt, but we have to create a growth economy. The public and private sector have to come together, and we have to grow our way out of the economy, right? But where are we growing to? We're going into AI technology, infrastructure, and you're going to hear Larry Fink talk about infrastructure a lot. So if they pull Bitcoin underneath the treasury, they fix the settlement problem with things like XRP, money starts moving at the speed of light. If velocity of money picks up, it starts to solve that problem. Money's moving faster, so what happens? People build things faster. And then if you fix supply chain with things like VeChain, that's why I love VeChain. If supply chain moves faster, money moves faster, production can move faster, we become more efficient with technology, we can really grow our way out of this economy. I really believe that. I don't think we have to go through an economic collapse with this.
So because this brings us to like, and you gotta be careful when we talk about this, but like the Great Reset.
They
want to reset the whole financial system, and so what Loomis is saying, and what Donald Trump was understanding, what Elon's understanding, what some really smart people are understanding, is that we may not need to collapse the whole system.
Correct.
Right, we may be able to actually, and you tell this to any economist that, we can pay off our debt by doing this, they're going to go, no, you can't. Right. That's what they all say. There's no way we can never come back from it. But it does make sense what she said. Now the question is, will we do that? So, because then we're at that battle with the leadership, right? The leaders of the world, whoever they are, right? The ones behind the shadow government, the ones in the black suits that come in and tell the president, you had some good ideas, but this is what you're really going to do. Right. I don't know. We gotta be careful when we say these things, but I know we're both on the same page. But so my question then is like, are they going to let it happen? Are they going to crash the whole thing? Because there's going to be a lot of people that'll make a lot of money if they crash the whole system versus paying our way out of it.
Well, I think the best way to look at this is and I love when influencers come out there and like, I got secret knowledge. None of us do. They're not telling some hippie YouTuber like me. They're not getting me any information. So what we can do is follow the money, right? So I look at BlackRock. BlackRock is the largest asset manager in the world, right? 10 trillion under management, larger than most global GDP. So if BlackRock is moving into Bitcoin, right, and they were tapped twice to balance out the markets in 2008 by the Fed and 2020 to balance out the markets by the Federal Reserve, So they obviously have some insight on what's going on, right?
And if they're buying a shit ton of Bitcoin, then they're building an infrastructure not only for Bitcoin but for real world assets.
For real world assets, right? And Larry Fink keeps saying we have to rethink retirement, and that's why I started to think about this. I'm like, okay, yeah, so you have to rethink retirement. And now Goldman Sachs, now it's not tinfoil hat anymore. Goldman Sachs, some of the largest asset managers in the world, are allowing their financial advisors to talk about crypto.
I got a guy, so we're both in the insurance industry, right? And there's a guy, I won't say his name, but it's a company named Fidelity and Guarantee that we work with. And one of the guys over there keeps asking me like weekly about crypto, right? Because he wants to bring it into the insurance industry.
Oh, I would love to.
Dude,
well, think about if allocations, they start to do that. Why wouldn't insurance companies allow people to allocate into Bitcoin?
Yeah, even if it's 5%.
100, yeah, because that's what asset managers are saying. Maybe put 5% of your portfolio.
Yeah, 2 to 5.
2 to 5%, yeah. So if you have the largest wealth is with the baby boomers, that's transferring down. If they could get 2 to 5% into Bitcoin, well, now BlackRock owns all the Bitcoin. So it's like you just have to follow the money, and people get so caught up in like conspiracy this, conspiracy. Just follow the money. I mean, just follow the largest asset managers in the world. You know, who's moving the money around the system.
Speaking of conspiracies, so this is not a question on here, but I want actually it might be further down. We'll get to the next one in a minute, but here's a question I want to get to. Who do you think created blockchain, Bitcoin? If you had to make an educated guess, and I want to point out, and by the way, if you guys could share, what do you think about that? Like, I have this whole thing that if I had to make an educated guess, I think it's something with the CIA, the NSA, something along those lines.
Yeah.
They created it because they know that the system has to change, and they got ahead of it.
Yeah, so I'll just...
Like, the Fed might have been part of it. What are your thoughts?
So I'll just stick with, I'm the facts, figures, numbers, logic guy. So like I'll go back to 2009. Okay, 2009. So I went into banking in 2007, 2008. I got to see the back end of that financial collapse, right? People were coming in with non-income stated loans. Like people had $1 million homes with no income. It was wild, man. I'm like, I was like, what is going on?
Like The Big Short. Go watch The Big Short, and you'll understand exactly what he's saying.
So think about this. Your other countries, and America's the dominant currency. So everything we do in our financial system affects their markets, right? So you're Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, BRICS. Yeah. So Goldman Sachs actually came up with the acronym. And so they took the acronym, and ironically, this is
Hold on.
Yeah.
Goldman Sachs came up with the acronym for BRICS?
Yep, so Goldman Sachs, a gentleman at Goldman Sachs actually came up with the BRICS acronym and said, imagine if they came together, they would end up being stronger and being able to flip the
G7.
In the G7, yep. So they actually took it and they created BRICS in 2009, and it's weird. Bitcoin's inception was in 2009. So Bitcoin comes alive in 2009, BRICS come alive, and their whole mission, this is not, you can go on their website, their mission is to de-dollarize from the American dollar. They say that. We are here to de-dollarize from the American dollar.
So how do you do that? You de-dollarize through crypto. You don't de-dollarize through going, well, I mean, that's
you have to create your own system. They're working to create their own central bank. So let's go through all the narratives, right? So 2009, Bitcoin's inception is created. 2012, we had the bank bailing committee created. Did they know something was coming? That they had to activate the bank bailing committee now, right? Then the pandemic hits, global shutdown, right? Money stops moving through the system, things become inefficient, we have supply chain problems. America turns a printing machine on full blast, like full blast. They bury us in debt. There's some smart people. They had to know that eventually this was gonna flip, right? Yeah. And then all of a sudden, in 2023, Larry Fink's like, Bitcoin's a flight to quality. So then all the asset managers start rushing into Bitcoin now. Then all of a sudden in the 2024 presidential campaign, now Bitcoin is one of the biggest things. The very thing that they made it for decentralization is now the very thing that they want to use to solve the problem for our national debt.
Well, talking about decentralization, though, although Bitcoin is very decentralized, the most decentralized asset ever created, but even though it's decentralized, see, people get this confused, and I have this argument with myself back and forth, right? You have Bitcoin being decentralized, and we're like, yeah, decentralization, taking the middleman out of it, blah, blah, blah. But what Bitcoin also does is it shows you every transaction. So although it's decentralized, everything done on it is seen by anybody. Correct. It doesn't matter if you're government or just me and you can go on and look at every transaction. You may not be able, the everyday regular person may not be able to know who's doing it because it's just a code, right? But you can follow it till it gets off to the off-ramp with the banking system, and you know, well, that was obviously, let's follow the transactions and know who it is. That's Silk Road. The same thing that happened with Ross Ulbricht and all that.
That goes in the whole narrative where they kept saying It's used for money laundering. That makes no sense.
It doesn't, but
why would you use it for money laundering and nefarious activities if you can track it?
that's what I'm saying. So it is decentralized, but it's also one of the most highly controlled mechanisms ever created.
Correct. It's decentralized in the fact that one centralized party doesn't run it. It's like it's run by the
They can't
people,
just
mined by
print
the.
more of it
Correct.
and blow it up.
Correct.
But they can
Yep.
they can almost control it because they know where the money's going.
Right. If something happens, they can go back and look at the transaction all the way back to who.
And this is every crypto outside. We were talking about this the other day. Outside of Monero. Right.
Yep.
I was talking about this with a guy named Blockchain Boy. I don't know if you know who he is. He's a crypto influencer.
Yeah, I've seen him. Yep.
And me and him had a phone call the other day, and he's like, "Ty, I want you to think about something." He's like, because we were talking about who created Bitcoin. We're really into that right now. I want to know, right?
Yeah.
And people think it's Elon because of the C++ coding and all that, and the things that Elon has dropped and said. People think that it's the cypherpunks.
Yeah.
Right? You've heard of that. People think that it's the CIA. Whoever it is, at the end of the day, I think it doesn't even matter. First of all, I want you guys to understand it doesn't matter who created it. It's going to be here.
Sure.
It's an amazing technology. It's solved the double spending problem that we've been trying to solve for hundreds of years.
That's the key.
Yeah.
Go ahead. We'll go
No,
into
go-
that.
no, go
yeah,
ahead.
no, that's the key. Like, if we just take out all the conspiracy, it solves the double spending problem.
Yeah.
Like, that's key right there for what he just said is so important, everybody. So I came from the banking sector. There's a double spend problem. So you could spend on your debit card more money than you have. Right? And it causes an overdraft, and they would charge you $35. You're spending money that doesn't exist. This solves that whole problem. There is no double spending.
Like, you can't spend it if you don't have it.
You don't have it.
Which is why you have intermediaries to make sure that it happens.
Correct.
And also, like humans, we just don't trust each other.
Correct.
So me and you need to, we could be the best of friends, right?
Yep.
We still need an intermediary to make
To
sure that
transact.
transaction's real.
Yep.
It's important that if I'm sending money over the internet, I send you $100, right? That's not a copy. That's
Correct.
the real 100.
Correct.
Well, who's going to facilitate that?
Yes.
That's the bank. That's PayPal. That's
Yep.
right. The middleman. It gets rid of all of that. So it's going to give governments a lot more control than I think people understand.
That's where the narrative
And
comes
it's,
in
it's
for
like
me.
backwards though. It's like, wait, but this was a freedom thing, but now it's a control
Yeah,
thing.
like-
when you really start to understand it.
Yes. Well, think about what you just said. Is it was created, and I'm not saying this is what happened that they created it, but I'm saying
theory.
It's a theory. 2009 Bitcoin, BRICS was created. That's de-dollarizing, and all of a sudden it's now the thing to fix the financial system, which I agree with. I completely agree with it, and that's why I started. And I had that narrative for a while. I was like, well, what if they? So I didn't start buying Bitcoin until July last year, and I finally was like, wait a minute. I'm just getting in. It's when BlackRock got in, I started getting in. I'm accumulating as much as I can, and I wish I would have got in a long time ago. But I guess XRP is my one where I got in early. But anyway, my point behind it is I kind of pulled myself to a 30,000 foot overview. I started studying history. I'm like, the system has to change, and it's not as scary as people think. We're going into digitization. We talked about insurance, right? Yeah. Eventually, the insurance companies need to move into more innovative technologies. They're always the last.
They're always last.
Always last, yeah. So
They're the safest.
Right, and how great would that be for an insurance company to have everything on a blockchain?
Everything's going to be on a blockchain.
Yep, you can track everything. You can see it from front point all the way to end point. That'd be amazing for the insurance companies to have all those touch points and protection points where you can see who touched it all the way through, so there's no lost paperwork and stuff like that.
So it's really not as free as we think. It's free, but it's not. It's free, but the government's always going to be looking over your shoulder with this technology, and that's why they got rid of Monero. Monero, you can't. Are you familiar with Monero?
Yeah, I'm not too familiar with the mechanisms of it.
So Monero.
Yeah.
So the reason go try to buy Monero.
Okay.
You can't. Back when I first learned about Bitcoin, I bought my first Bitcoin when it was a few $100s.
Okay.
Right.
Wow.
And yeah, it was a long time
Amazing.
ago. But I was buying Monero at the time too because Monero was man. Wait. Okay. So let's go into that. So Monero was really the when you look at the mechanism, how it works, essentially what I can do is I can take Monero, I can pay you.
Okay.
That transaction disappears, so it doesn't show where it came from.
Okay.
Right. So then, well, what do you think governments did?
Yeah.
Right. Binance delisted it. Kraken delisted it.
Got it.
Right. Coinbase.
Yep.
No, I don't think Coinbase ever had it. Right. Even the Uniswaps of the world.
Yeah.
Right. The Pancake Swap. All of them. Right.
Yep.
Because they want to be regulated. They're going to be regulated. They
Sure,
don't want the
yep.
government jumping down and destroying them because they did something wrong.
Yeah.
Right. So they delisted it everywhere.
Wow.
Right. Because it was actually you can't actually see where it's coming from.
Got it.
Right?
Yeah.
So they chose Bitcoin because of that reason, because they can follow it, because they can see everything that's going on. So when
Yep.
I go down that rabbit hole, I'm like, if I had to make an educated guess, it was created by some type of intelligence agency.
It was very smart people.
I don't care if maybe it was the Mossad.
Satoshi Nakamoto.
Who knows?
Yeah, I don't know. It's like, again, too, it's like looking at money needs to change. We can't, if you just look at microeconomic, money needs to change. We need a different way of doing money. Yeah. We have to. And also, too, like you can't, somebody brought this up. We have AI technology. AI cannot operate in the fiat system. So imagine how quickly AI is coming in.
That's true, too.
It can't operate in the fiat system.
That's a really good point. So I'm going to summarize what he just said.
Yeah.
This is really important, right? If all of you can agree, all of you guys can agree that AI is going to be here for the long run, right? We all know. I mean, look at NVIDIA is the #3 largest company by market cap.
Great
now,
example,
right? So if AI is going to be here, AI is going to work too fast,
way too
right?
fast.
To keep up with this slow system that we have currently today, the banking system that we have today. So it's going to have to go to blockchain technology. So those of you that don't think crypto's here to stay, right? Don't get me wrong. There's going to be a ton of cryptos that aren't going to be here, right? Just next bull run, there's going to be cryptos that I've talked about personally that will not be here. That's why I sell 90% of my crypto, right? In 2025 is I think when I'm going to do it. I'll let you guys know. But yeah, it's very important for people to understand that. Like what you just said is that like with AI coming, I never even thought about that, and then you said that and it just clicked. I'm like, wait a minute, like obviously I know crypto's going to be here. I have a very big belief in this technology. Blockchain technology is like the wheel. It's like fire. It's like the engine. It's like the airplane. Like it's that big, right? It could be even bigger. We've never had.
It's massive.
Again, the double spending problem.
Double spending.
So that's very interesting. So guys, if you're sitting there thinking, I don't know if crypto's going to be, if you're still one of those people or you know people in your family, bring that up and say to them exactly what he just said. Well, is AI going to be here? Is AI going to advance? If AI is going to advance, then you need a faster system for AI to run on, right? Because AI is going to incorporate everything that we do. Real world assets, right? Your home, your car, your food, everything.
Yes.
Right? Well, then that payment rail and that, not just the payment rail, but just what AI runs on is going to have to be blockchain.
And think about this too, like, okay, 1913 was about 100 years ago.
Yeah.
Think about how different the world is just 100 years ago, one lifetime ago.
And that was when fiat really became like the thing.
Yeah, so well, in 1971 we attached them to gold standards, so our money became fake, right? Nothing backing it. From 1971, my parents bought a house in 1973 for $25,000. Guess what that house is worth today?
Probably $700-800 grand.
$400 grand. It has not changed. Do you think their pay has gone up that much? No. It's not sustainable what's happening right now. It's that we cannot continue to be in an economy like this, an inflationary environment and it's because of the printing of money. Because free money doesn't work. You can't just keep printing money. At some point, we need a tipping point, and this is the tipping point.
So the big question, and this is the big question, is the whole entire system going to collapse? And then we bring it onto the blockchain, or do we integrate it to the blockchain? I personally think there's going to be a collapse. That then it's like you talk about this all the time. Reaction solution. What is it?
Problem,
reaction, solution.
Yep. There's a problem that's created.
So they create the problem by printing the money, right? And then you have a reaction from people, and then the government comes in with a solution, which could be XRP, could be just crypto in general, blockchain.
Yep.
Right?
You just nailed it. So you got problem. Problem is we have from 2020 to now, inflation has gone up 19%. Right? So in order for someone to live the same lifestyle, they need to make $1,000 more a month, just in simple terms. The average American needs to make $150,000 a year to be middle class now, right? So that's the problem. The reaction is, oh my God, I can't live. The solution is a central bank digital currency, UBI, or a faster set. So it makes sense why they would bring it in now. Oh, that makes sense, because now we can bring Bitcoin in.
They bring you the solution.
That's just how.
Well, we're gonna save the day. We ruined it for you, and now we're gonna come in and be the savior.
But that's happened over and over. In the Roman days, they were drunk in the Colosseum, and the Trojan horse came in. I mean, that's one thing I always encourage people to do instead of just. I teach my kids this. I just tell people, why do you believe what you believe? That's it. It's not about believing what I'm believing, but why do you believe what you believe? So
is it true, or was it fed to you?
Was it fed to you by somebody? Did somebody? Oh, this is so. When I like, for example, the way I run 6 companies, and so I wouldn't look like the normal guy that would have any wealth, right? I walk into places that judge me because I walk into banks like this and stuff. My father looks at me, and I used to be a banker, right? My father's like, my son's a banker. I'm so proud of him. I'm in a totally different paradigm financially, and this doesn't make sense to him, right? But why does my dad believe what he believes? Because if you wear a suit, if you got a 535i BMW, you're successful. right? So that was a paradigm why he believed that. Now he sees this. He cannot understand that I can be successful like this. But there's nothing wrong with that. But it's why does he believe what he believes? Because he doesn't ask questions. He's like, oh, that crypto's a fraud. It's a fraud. I'm like, okay, but why do you believe what you believe, right? And so it's about
that.
going deep in understanding. It's like, why do people believe, like you say to some, I pray over my food. People are like, why do you pray over? Well, why do you pray over your food? Well, it's my mom told me to, my grandma told me to. Well, I pray over it because it's nutrients, it's energy, it's vibration going into my body, and I want to bless everything that goes into my body. Right? So it's like...
So you just ask questions.
I just ask questions.
So you learned it all, but then you ask questions.
Over and
so
over.
The moral of the story is ask questions
Ask
like
questions.
why you think,
Yeah.
or why you think this or think that, instead of just blatantly
Yeah,
going
don't
into
believe some
something and
long-haired
believing it.
hippie dude on TikTok. It's like be like, hey, why, like JB, well, why do you, that's why I explain why I buy the things that I believe. Why do I buy XRP? Why am I buying, why do I insure my wealth? There's a reason why I do that, because I believe you got insurance, real estate, the first annuity was in the Roman days, right? And precious metals have always been here. They will pass the test of time forever, right? So that's why those are the three biggest assets that I'll be holding in the future, because the system is changing, so I'm going to get out of the system change from the left side of the risk pyramid and bring it down.
We're going to talk about that. That's another topic. Your next favorite ISO token. We all know you love XRP.
Yeah.
But in that whole ISO compliant, not that ISO compliance is different,
Sure.
right? Which one do you like the most?
I'd say XLM. I see XRP as commercial, XLM consumer.
You think they're going to work together? Or not together, but work?
Yeah, in tandem. I think Jed McCaleb left Ripple to start XLM. I think it's going to be a settlement mechanism. Like, they're working with some countries too, but I think I own quite a bit of XLM as well.
I don't own any Stellar.
Yeah,
Stellar
I
Lumen,
really,
right?
yeah, Stellar Lumen, Jet, spiritual too, Stellar.
Yeah, I mean, I did back in the day. I don't anymore.
Yeah.
But a lot of these, like I said, XRP, from my following, you guys know I don't really talk highly of XRP. And it's not because I don't like it. It's because I just don't think that that's the asset that's going to make me the most money right now. But in the future, it's going to be something that I hold on to a ton of.
I love that.
Right, and maybe I don't. Maybe after this bull run, a couple years from now, you know, the government comes out and says we're using X, Y, and Z, and we're not using it Ripple, and then that's the one that you're going to want to own if you can.
Yeah.
Or they centralize it and you can't.
Yeah.
Right, we'll see. So this whole Telegram thing that's happening, right?
It's crazy.
Let's go down that rabbit hole. So what's his name? I forgot his name. Either way, it doesn't matter. The guy that started Telegram, the CEO of Telegram, was arrested last week.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And the thing that really bugs me about it is that he created this platform where people can talk openly and freely, and people, you know, obviously when you create anything, it doesn't matter what it is, you're gonna have good and bad.
Sure.
Right? So now he is getting arrested for what other people did that he had no connection to, other than he created the platform that it happened on.
Sure.
Same kind of thing happened to Bryce Albridge, right? With the guy that started the Silk Road and the whole. Are you familiar with that?
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So what are your thoughts on that?
Oh man, free speech is in danger right now. That scares me, man. That really, really, really scares me. It's like, for example, I'll give you an example. I post my YouTube videos on Twitter, they explode. I post them on YouTube, barely any views. So there's definitely a difference between the two. I obviously tailor things that I say on certain platforms, because you have to be careful. The free speech is being challenged right now. It really is. You know, you look at the TikTok thing, whether people agree with it or not, whatever side of the coin you're on. And it's signed, it passed. They signed something into law that the president can decide which platform you can use. That's completely against Americans' freedom of speech. Like, so for example, if I want to choose to use TikTok and whatever they think is happening with TikTok, I don't know the mechanisms behind it, but I should be able to choose what platform I want to use, right? And then it goes a step further to arrest the person. So is Mark Zuckerberg going to get arrested for misinformation? You know what I'm saying?
So Zuck, that's another thing. I didn't put that in here, but Zuck just came out and said that
Yep.
the Biden administration, he literally said this, so he came out and publicly said that the Biden-Harris administration basically forced him to censor something to do with the dossier, something to do with the Hunter Biden laptop, also censor just Trump stuff in general.
Like memes and stuff like that. Yep.
Zuckerberg came out and wrote a letter saying this is exactly what happened. Maybe getting ahead of it. Right, I don't know. Maybe he sees the writing on the wall and he knows that, you know, he wants to be he wants to make friends now. I don't know.
Yeah, I think whatever side of the coin you're on, there's definitely going to be we're going to be in a different world. Whether and I'm not going to get into politics to offend anybody, but it's like it's left and right. It's polarizing. It's two different worlds. It's two different worlds. You talk about CBDC would be more left. A more Bitcoin administration would be right. More freedom with crypto. There'll be a lot more regulation. So the let's just talk about Larry Fink. Larry Fink wants to bring the public and private sector together. Trump wants to be in the public and private. What that means is like privatizing airports, right? Instead of having, like for example, what happened when the government got involved in student loans or colleges? It got expensive every time they get involved.
Really,
well, when
really
they got involved in
expensive.
Subsidizing housing, what happened? Got really expensive houses,
True.
right? Anytime private and public sector work together, we can control the mechanisms of how things work, and we should be cooperating, private and public sector coming together, privatizing airports, and growing our way out of this economy. The cool thing about all the new innovative technologies is we can grow infrastructure now. We need to grow infrastructure, that we need a new infrastructure which creates jobs. So I kind of, there's just two sides of the coin I'm on. Everybody's like, there's gonna be this big financial collapse. I think there's gonna be a stock market meltdown in the future, and there's going to be a growing out of this economy, which is going to be, I see peace and prosperity, man. I really see it down the road. So
I think it's going to get a lot more bloody before it gets better.
It has to.
But
Yeah.
we will have good times again.
Sure.
That is definitely going to come, and I think a lot of those good times is going to come from crypto. If we do see a stock market collapse, one of the things that people don't realize is that all these different stocks that they own, all these different companies, they're all going to utilize blockchain. Every single one, or they won't be able to survive.
They have to.
Right?
Yep.
They're not going to be able to. It's like today, if you don't know how to use email, you don't have a smartphone, right? If you don't know how to use what's on this, you can't survive.
Yeah, well, think about too how much we have one of our companies that we do a lot of media stuff, and we've had to switch the roles of our people because media, for example, you can literally put it in Opus and they can do all the editing for you in seconds. Like what took me 3 staff members,
Did you hear that?
bunch of editing. Yeah, it's crazy, and so it's replacing jobs. You got McDonald's; they have autonomous McDonald's now. And they're testing all this stuff out.
No
Elon,
people in there.
Yeah, there's no people, and so everybody needs to start rethinking, looking at their companies too.
Right.
Like we're sitting here with an extremely innovative company. Like I just learned a bunch of really cool stuff. Like innovation is key right now. So I met with my CEO and CFO, and I said we have to innovate 5 to 10 years in the future. Like what we are as a company right now will not survive the next 5 to 10 years.
I agree.
Will not survive.
I agree. Well, this is going to be a great subject. The next subject here is going to be, I hear you talking about all this all the time. I've actually learned from it. I knew about this plan for a long time, and it's called the Rockefeller plan.
Yeah.
And I want you to kind of elaborate on it. One, where were you introduced to it?
Yeah.
Can you just kind of go into it. Like,
Yeah.
why do you like it? Right? Why do you think it's effective?
Yeah, I think though I read the book What Would the Rockefellers Do, and so it's a great book. Everybody should read it. So the Vanderbilts, just to make it simple, the Vanderbilts and the Rockefellers are some of the 2 richest families in the world. They were. The Vanderbilts ran out of their wealth in 7 years because Vanderbilt literally just gave money to his family, right? Rockefeller created a waterfall system, and they insured everybody, insured the money. So every time a Rockefeller dies, their trust gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And so how I was introduced...
This is how you start generational wealth.
Correct. That's how you start generational wealth. So first started, I was in a vertical strategy. So I went to school, got a job, had a 401k. Left, cashed out my 401k, started a business. Then I was working in a company. I bought a job, my own company, and I was trading time for money again, and I had crypto. I was like, oh, I'm gonna be rich in crypto. And some guy walked in my gym one time, and I was telling him how XRP is gonna do this, and he's like, never mix your investments with your retirement. And then he dropped the mic and walked out, and I was like, what do you mean? And then COVID hits. They shut my business down. They shut my ability to take care of my family. So I'm trading time for money in my business, and they take away my ability to feed my family. So I lose everything. I had my crypto, and so I had moved back in with my parents at 43 years old. It was embarrassing. I was like, this is crazy. I was like, this can never happen again. And so I'm like, crypto. So I called the guy. I said, what did you mean by that? He goes, the stock market, cryptocurrencies, like anything that goes up and down like that, that's your retirement? He goes, have you ever thought of insuring your wealth? And I was like, you can insure.
So that is most people's retirement, though. It's volatile assets.
Correct. It's volatile
crypto,
assets.
It's 401ks, 403bs, IRAs, right? And this is what we're taught.
Yep.
Again,
That's what we're
it
taught,
goes
yep.
back to questioning what we just talked about earlier.
Why do you believe what you
Why
believe?
do you believe what you believe?
And like when you
right?
talk to somebody about insurance, insurance is expensive. Well, do you know how much your 401k is charging you every single year?
The other thing is it designed correctly? And it's not for everybody. But,
Yeah, and I'm not against the 401k or Roth IRAs. What I am against is people controlling my money. I'm absolutely against that now because with crypto, at least I can control the selling, the buying, it's liquid, right? And so what I started doing is I started pulling from when it probably profited from 2020 2022. I pulled from high risk, high return. I moved it down the risk pyramid into, I used IUL. I max funded my IUL policies. And then I read the book, What Would the Rockefellers Do? And I was like, I want generational wealth. I want to know when I'm passing away that my kids' will be rich. I don't want to just hand them a bunch of money. I want to hand them some rules and relations and my belief system on what I believe around money and spirituality. And so within my Rockefeller Trust, I have a waterfall system. So every child that's born into my family, at day 15, they attach, if you want to be part of the Vasquez Dynasty Trust, you attach an insurance policy to the trust. So that gives you access to the trust. Then there's rules and regulations. 50% goes to my kids, 50% goes to the dynasty. I put rules in there, for example, my past, we'll go into my history of past, and there's addiction in my family and stuff like that. If anybody gets addicted to alcohol or drugs, they're pulled away from the trust and they get paid for 100% rehab, and they have to be drug tested for 2 years before they ever get access back to the money, right? If my daughter wants to start a business, she can go to the dynasty trust, but she has to attach in a policy to any money she borrows in there. So anybody touches the money, and we keep attaching. So basically when I pass away, it goes for 1,000 years from generation to generation. And so that's called the waterfall system. So I take from high risk, high return, I bring it down to tier 1 capital, and then I put the Rockefeller waterfall system over it.
So this is something that I've been doing with a lot of my following. Some of you guys are watching right now, and some of you guys should set up a call with me. And if you follow JV and you like JV, obviously he does this as well. So we'll reach out to him. You guys know where to find him. But something that I've been telling people is you have your high risk assets over here, your crypto, your stocks, your mutual funds, all this stuff that's all over the place, right? When you start to make really good gains, I'm excited for when crypto takes off, because I have a lot of people that are like, okay, I've just cashed out hundreds of thousands of dollars, tens of thousands, even millions, right? What do I do? Well, I have a strategy in some of that, and it's similar to what you said. I don't know if it's the exact Rockefeller strategy, but I'm going to obviously keep some in cash because I'm going to buy back in, right? I'm going to keep some in gold. I think that owning gold is something that everybody should have in their portfolio, right? And obviously, we are not financial advisors. We are educators, so obviously, just keep that. I should put that disclaimer in here. Got to be careful in this world. But yeah, and then some of it is going to go back into crypto, like I said. Real estate will be part of that portfolio, and then insurance, right? And what I've done is I've set something up on all my kids and my wife. The reason I haven't done myself is because I had cancer 9 years ago, right? And so I have really high cost of insurance, right? So it just doesn't make sense. I'm sitting here thinking, well, I'm the owner of my kids' policies. I'm the owner of my wife's policies. So what we do is we stuff those. So when we start making money, it's not all of it. So let's just give an example. If I make $100,000 on crypto, right? I'm going to take 20 of it and it's going to go diversified into different policies, right? Another 20 of it's going to go into gold. Another 20 of it's going to go into Bitcoin. Another 20 of it's going to go into cash, right? I might, and those numbers could change. Maybe it's 15%, 10%. But my point is, I start to diversify it over into a bunch of different baskets and de-risk, because I'm over here in a very risky asset. Those of you that are watching, you guys all watch us because of crypto. You guys are in a very risky asset. When you make money, and some of you might think it's dead right now, it's never coming back. I promise you it is coming back. This is here to stay. It's going to come back, he said, big time, right? And one of the things you do is you move it over and you to, what do you call it on the risk pyramid? You just de-risk it.
Yeah, I de-risk it. I pull it from the left side of it. Crypto would be on the top of it, right? So I pull from the top of the risk pyramid. I pull it down to tier 1 capital. Tier 1 capital is like you have insurance, you have bonds. I'm not putting my money in bonds, but you can. Bonds are very safe.
Well, a lot of the insurance companies are using bonds.
Correct. Insurance is my number one. You got a bank account, right? That's tier 1 because it's protected by FDIC insurance. So it's just bringing it in. I love the word de-risk. You're de-risking it into your assets. And also, too, everybody should read the book Richest Man in Babylon. Is that the goal is, for example, I'm never selling my Bitcoin. Here's why. And this is not financial advice. I'm just telling you what I'm doing. So I thought about this with Bitcoin. I was like, okay, I want to talk to a bunch of people about this and get their advice. So Bitcoin, if there's only in 116 years, it'll all be mined, right? 94% of the supply is left, only 6%. They're going to mine 450 a day, and the government wants to buy 550.
Well, that also gets cut in half.
Correct.
Every 4 years.
So you're going to have an appreciating asset that keeps going up. I'm never going to sell my Bitcoin, but what I will do is once everything settles down, I'll borrow against it tax-free, buy a property, allow the renter to pay off my loan, and now you have 2 appreciating assets. At the same time. And then with my insurance, what I do too, it's OPM, other people's money. So I stuff my policies, I make sure I max fund them, and then I have access to the cash value. I use myself as my bank. So if I need to buy more assets, I'll go to my cash value, borrow against my cash value, and I'll buy more assets. And then another thing, the rule that I created is this year, this is our next level of what we want to do, is my net debts and non-negotiables. I will not buy anything I want. Listen to me what I'm saying, crypto people. I will not buy anything I want until my net is paid for by assets. So once my net debts and non-negotiables, my family's secure, all my investments, all the IUL policies are paid for by an asset, then I'll start buying the things that I want, because now my family's secure. That's how you build generational wealth.
Dude, I like it. That's what I've been telling you guys for so long. Like, there's so many people, they're just like so stuck on just this one way that they've been taught, and that's that risky way. That's that 401k, the crypto, and don't get me wrong, I love all this stuff, right? Well, I'm not a big fan of the 401k, but that's another story for another day. But no, it makes total sense, because you're going to make so much money in crypto, and if you don't sell it and put it somewhere, right, safe, what are you doing? You're going to put it back in the market and lose it all. So why not de-risk some of it? And now, when we say de-risk, though, let's go into that.
Yeah.
So talking about de-risking,
okay.
You de-risk, but a lot of these things are going to give you comparable returns to the market. Right,
yeah.
like when you look at an IUL, or you look at some, and not everything. It depends on how it's designed.
Correct.
Right, because these things can be detriment. Understand.
Very important.
When one of the things that you guys need to understand is they need to be max funded or very close to max funding.
Yep.
They need to be set up correctly.
Yep.
So that's something. If you do have one and you follow JV, go reach out to him and say, hey, can you guys give us an overview and take a look at mine, see if it's done correctly. His team can do that. My team can do that. Whoever you want to work with, doesn't matter.
Yep.
But no, seriously, it's one of those things where I tell people all the time, I'm like, dude, you gotta take some of that money and move it over to something that's still gonna get you comparable returns, like just like annuities. There's some annuities out there, they have such a bad name. Sometimes people hate them, but there's some of them that are really good.
Yeah.
Some of them are gonna give you a 7, 8, 9% rate of return.
Yes.
Like they really are.
Yep.
And you have no downside risk. Like, I mean, outside of whatever fees are involved in that, but that's the other argument people give you all the time is, well, insurance is too fee heavy. Well, how much is your fee in your 401k? You get to, I don't know. And normally it's between 2 and 4%.
Sure, yep,
right?
yep.
So regardless if you make money or not, you're losing money.
True,
The insurance companies work the same way. You're going to have your cost of insurance, and then some annuities have fees anywhere from 1 to 2%, right? You're going to pay something wherever you go. That's just another way for an advisor to say, hey, don't put your money here. And I talk about this all the time. So have you had conversation with financial advisors before?
Yeah, I used to work in the bank. I ran a bunch of banks.
So notice something. They don't use a lot of insurance policies, right? And here's the reason. Here's my reason. I think this is why. Because they only get paid once on it, right? So when you put somebody's money into annuity, you get paid once, right? The insurance carrier pays you. You don't get paid from that. You don't pay the person. The insurance carrier will pay whoever did it. They get paid one time, right? Would you rather get paid one time, or would you rather get paid for the next 10, 20 years?
Yeah, most people would rather get paid.
Right. So and then on top of that, the other thing. So that's why it has a bad name. It's just you got to understand that there's good and bad in anything. There's 401ks out there that are terrible.
Yeah.
Terrible. There's mutual funds out there that are horrendous. Right. There's insurance policies out there that are designed for horrendous. Right. So you just have to know. You have to trust who you're working with. I tell people all the time, look, at the end of the day, I'm going to do what's right because I want referrals, right? I want you to stay my client forever, and I don't want to go to jail. Those 3 things.
I think the key is too, like what I tell people is financial literacy, man. Like just learn, again, why do you believe what you, I love when my clients ask us questions. Like, please keep asking questions and we'll keep giving you answers to that. And we also give them tools and resources, like go research this, like go, and they're like, well, I want to go talk to this person. Please do, and ask these questions. Like ask them, why do you believe what you believe? Why? Because people just say, this is a fraud, crypto's a fraud. And so I say to people, why do you believe that?
Wait, where'd you get that information from?
Well, and they'll say to me, well, my banker told me this. Well, where did your banker get that? So not what your banker said, what do you believe in it? So what I encourage people to do is to research, and that's what I do with my kids. Like my daughter's 20 years old, she's got an IUL policy. I mean, she's already going to retire a millionaire. She's got more money in the capital markets.
Same with my kids.
Yeah, more money in the capital markets than most adults. By the time she's 30, I told her opposite. I said, you can live with me as long as you want. I said, the rule is you have to invest 30% of your income. All the way until you're 30 years old, then you can figure it out from there. And she has more in the capital markets than most adults I meet with, and it's just, I reverse engineered. I said, put as much money as you can into your investments and live off your investments the rest of your life. Instead of going to, and I'm not saying I have an education, I'm not encouraged, she didn't want to go to school, that was her thing. And so it's like, I didn't want her to go to school, get $100,000 in loans, get a car, get a little condo or something and be buried in debt.
All the stuff that we did when we were younger.
Right. And so so these are things that we have to rethink money, we have to rethink retirement and Social Security, who knows if it's gonna be here. Pensions don't exist anymore hardly. the average, I think it's, and I apologize if you guys can look this up, but I think the average retirement account in America is like 394,000. Right, you got the average American. I think it doesn't even have was it 1 out of 4 people don't have $1,000 in their account or something like that.
It's 50% of Americans.
Oh my God,
It's 50,
I was way off.
50% of Americans don't have $1,000 in an emergency fund.
Yeah, so it's just about rethinking. I guess my whole point behind it is we got to start asking questions, and it's okay to, like, for example, where did I start? Like when I lost everything, I was like, I lost everything. They shut my business. I was so pissed off, man. And I was like, I went to the public library and I started reading every book I could on wealth. I was like, okay, Richest Man in Babylon, Think and Grow Rich, Secrets of the Millionaire Mind.
Think and Grow Rich is
a great book, man. Cash Flow Quadrant. I read that over and over and over. Yeah, that's where I learned most of my stuff from.
His Rich Dad, which was the
Rich
PhD.
Dad. Yep. And again, too, like, there's nothing wrong with your investment vehicle. There's something wrong with not knowing what your investment vehicle is. Like, think about this. You trade time for money all day. Okay? You earn that money, and then you're just trusting someone else with your retirement, hoping. Like, imagine the people that, when the economy collapsed from 2006 to 2008, imagine those people that worked their whole life and they're about to retire during that time. They've been there, they can see the finish line, and all of a sudden the whole market just collapses and melts.
That's what's happening with me right now. Not with me personally, but people that are following me. There's a lot of them are in their late 40s, 50s, or 60s, and they see what's going on in the world, right? And those of you, listen up. This is very important for those of you. If you're in your late 40s, 50s, and 60s, this is very important to you. We are undoubtedly coming into some type of collapse, I think, right? Are we going to print our way out of it and things will get better? Probably. But it doesn't mean that there's not a collapse coming, and eventually we're going to see a collapse that's bigger than we've ever seen. It's just inevitable. Is that in the next 5 years, the next 2 years, the next 2 months, 10 years? I don't know, right? But if you're close to retirement, I say to people all the time, why are you still in the market? If you can get comparable returns, right, but you can protect your wealth, right? Why are you not protecting at least some of it? So I've had a lot of people reach out to me. A lot of people. I mean, we've been rolling over millions of dollars, right? People are like, wait a minute, I didn't know this existed. My advisor never told me this. Well, your advisor doesn't have your best interest. That's a fact. Most advisors don't have their customers' best interest. It's how can I keep this money as long as possible, right? That's one of the, it's at least my belief. I'm not saying.
Well, yeah, coming from a banking perspective, it's also too, like, think if you work for Wells Fargo Bank or you work for Chase Bank, you're selling the products and services they think are best for their client, right? And they have commission structure, bonus structures, all this stuff. And so it's like if somebody just works for one company, that's why I like being an agent that could provide all products, right? And because I'm not captive to one company, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I'm just saying, like, again, like when the bankers were saying Bitcoin's a fraud, they were just repeating what was told to them. Right?
That's true.
They were just repeating and so when I was presented to me, I was like, it's a fraud. And then I dove into it and I was like, wait a minute. There's something here.
Then you start understanding the printing of money. You understand the decentralization aspect of it, right? You understand the limited supply, all these things, and you're like, wait a minute, how is that a fraud?
Yeah.
Actually, what the fraud is the banks.
Right. Well, if you think about it too, like the way my parents did it right. Everything's paid off. They own their home. But they're sitting on cash, they're old school. That cash has no value other than our belief in it. The cash has no value other than our belief in it. And they're so stuck in that old paradigm, I can't get them to move that cash somewhere that's going to benefit them, right? Because it's an old paradigm. But that money is going to transfer down now. That's transferring from baby boomers down to the next generation.
A lot of people, they ask me this question, all right, Tyler, so I get what you're saying and it all makes sense. And you probably heard this before, you probably thought it before. Okay, but if you're talking about crypto and blockchain and how that's going to be the future, then why would I be investing in products that aren't crypto and blockchain? And that's where, and I want to get your thoughts on this, because the entire industry of insurance, the entire banking industry, we talk about real world assets. What Larry Fink talks about tokenization of virtually everything in the world.
Sure.
So even if you're going over to the old system is going to migrate to the new system.
Yeah, people always say, what about insurance? Like I said, the first annuity was in Roman days, right? Insurance has always been around. Insurance companies are backwards of banks. They're over collateralized, and so eventually the system is going to switch into the new system. It's not like all insurance policies are going to collapse, right? It gets impossible. Go under the new system, whatever that is. And again, it's all about diversification. It's like being diversified is probably the most important thing. It's like, and we weren't taught that as in America. It was go to school, get a job, have a 401k, cryptocurrency.
The agrarian school system.
Yeah, just like boom, it's this vertical strategy. So
Let's do some Q&A. I have my
Awesome.
TikTok up right now. We're live, so let's do some Q&A. Do you guys have any questions? Are you invested in any deep in projects?
deep end. I don't even know what that is.
Oh man, we got to get you on the deep end.
I don't even know what that
We'll
is.
talk after
Okay,
this.
okay, yeah.
Oh man, I'm about to open. That's gonna
Really?
be huge.
Okay, I love
yeah,
learning,
the deep
man.
in narrative is gonna be huge.
Interesting.
No, we'll have to get you into that. So here's a question for somebody, Sue. Do most coins go parabolic in the bull run? Are you expecting? I've been telling everybody that sometime in 2025, because that's when you look at the 4-year cycle.
Yep.
2025 is that 4th year.
Got it. Yep.
Right? From 2021 to 2025. A lot of the money was made last bull cycle between 2020 and 2021.
Correct.
Right?
Yep.
I
correct.
got that correct, right?
Yes.
So a lot of people are like sitting here, and after the Bitcoin halving, typically we see a flat line or a dump, which
Correct.
we just did.
We
It
did.
happened like history, repeating itself.
Exact.
So I still think that come 2025, we're going to see a parabolic run in crypto, and this is everything.
Yeah.
We're talking every
Yep.
single crypto is not okay. When I say everything, I mean virtually every crypto, even if it doesn't have a real use case, right? Meme coins, the list goes on and on. I think things are going to go crazy parabolic.
Yeah, because
What about
Bitcoin, when Bitcoin goes up, all the profits flood into altcoins. I mean, it's just organic. Yeah, and I think too, like I was looking at the money supply report, 2020, they turned the money supply on, and then you had the Bitcoin halving, right? Then we went into, was it back into 2020 it started to go up? And then 2021 just went straight up,
2021
right?
went nuts.
Yeah,
and then it came down just as fast as it went up.
2022, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, no, it was 2021, 2022. Yeah, I guess you could say in 2021 it started to go down. It was November when it peaked.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
I remember because
Yep.
it was my birthday, and I was sitting there, and I ended up selling in like December and January.
Okay.
I wish I sold in November because that was the peak.
Yeah.
And again, everybody wants to know when is that going to be. We don't know what
knows?
month it's
Yeah.
going to be. It could be the middle of next year. It could be the end.
Yeah.
It could go into 2026 a little bit. But my point is that yes, to answer your question, we both personally think that things are going to go parabolic. We have not seen anything yet.
Yeah.
Right. All you got to do is go off of history. And again, me and you are big. And
Yeah.
we're big on history. Not necessarily repeats
It
itself, but it
rhymes.
rhymes.
It will rhyme, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that every crypto that you've heard us talk about, we'll see some type of pump, some bigger than others.
Oh, yeah.
Right. But
Yep.
we are not even close.
Yep.
We're not even close. Well, brother, it was a pleasure.
Appreciate it. That was awesome, man.
Yeah,
Thank
this
you
is the
guys.
second
Yeah,
time we've
thank you.
done this. The first time we talked
Yeah.
about your life. We didn't even talk about crypto at all, which is crazy. So this is good. So we'll have to do this
Awesome.
again.
Cool.
But I appreciate you guys.
Thank you, guys. Yeah.
Appreciate you again.
Thank you,
For real,
brother.
man.
Yep,
I'm
it's
glad
awesome.
you took time out of your day to be here. I know you got a
course.
family and children, and I know how important that is.
Thank you, man. Appreciate
So
it.
I love it. So
Awesome.
anyways, we'll see you guys soon.
Thank
Make
you.
sure you guys like, share, and follow.
Thank you, guys.